Hope you're ready. Comments are disabled for this video.
Should I do it with my left hand? No, just hurts.
This is episode 2 for March 11, 2014. Let's chat. Welcome to Magic Chat with Dan and Mike. I'm your host, Dan Levant, and with me today is the lovely and talented Michael McKenna. Mike,
we're back!
Who's our sponsor this week, Mike?
14th century coffins. Look good, in style, when you're dead, in the past.
If you're going to go with a coffin, you may as well go in with a little signal flag.
Nice little bell, too.
There you go, yeah. If you get buried alive, you're all set. And having peace of mind when you're dead is so
that's
important.
what matters most to me.
Absolutely.
14th century coffins.
So before we get in with our Pack One Pick One, we're going to tackle a little listener feedback, our first listener feedback. Kind of psyched about this. This is from the forums at mtgthesource.com.
We hate legacy.
Yeah. So, Mike, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to have you read this guy's post right here.
Oh, wow, that is harsh. That's pretty smart of you. You made a podcast as Doomsayer, saying that Legacy would collapse on its own weight, and then post your podcast onto a Legacy-centric website. That sure would draw lots of Legacy fans to your podcasts. Wonderful stuff.
Yep.
Then you mentioned Modern Masters. Interestingly enough, reprint of Click and Dark Confidant from Modern Masters actually helped the card availability of Legacy, which counter your point and you did not mention. I question your marketing strategy.
Good closing line there. He does make a point.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, we have a great show, and in my enthusiasm, I posted about it everywhere that I could, including MTG The Source. And it never occurred to me that our comments about the Legacy format would be disheartening to folks in these forums.
The best part? We're primarily Legacy players.
Yeah, we are. So I probably deserve a good dope slap for that, Mike, if you please. Thank you.
That was
I needed that. So I just want to take a minute and talk about Legacy and how we feel about it. First of all, we are both huge Legacy players.
We are.
If I could only play one constructed format for the rest of my life, it would be Legacy, without question.
I would play Rug Delver for the rest of my life, too.
Rug Delver is your deck.
Yep.
Jund is mine, not the Punishing Jund, because the mana base is too fragile for my taste.
Fair
but
enough.
that's how I like it. And I want to talk a little bit about this, because when you love a format in a game this much, you kind of have to be realistic about it. And I was listening to the Card Advantage podcast, and Rich Hagan was on it, and he made a great analogy. He said, Legacy, I'm going to use a different country than he did, but Legacy is never going to go away, just like Portugal is never going to go away. If you look back a couple of centuries, Portugal was a world power. They had a huge market economy in trade. They had a massive navy. They were a commanding power in the world. Now, Portugal has not disappeared. Portugal is still there as a country. There are still Portuguese people in Portugal doing the things that Portuguese people do. But they are no longer a superpower in the world by any stretch. So we're going to get to the point with Legacy where the card availability for key cards, especially the dual lands, but there's a lot of others like Lion's Eye Diamond, Moat, Candelabras, Tabernacles, Time Spiral, all of these cards that get used in Legacy all the time. It's not just that they're going to be insanely expensive, they're just not going to be out there. People are just not going to be selling them.
That's what we need to show Wizards. We need this type of approach because people need these cards to play. And we just had a 4,300 person Modern event.
Yeah.
Magic is growing all over the place. This format wasn't even popular. The more people get Modern cards, the more cards share with Legacy cards. So you can start building a Legacy deck off of Modern cards, and these cards just aren't going to be there when they start getting... Maybe they need Polluted Delta because they had a set of Scalding Tarns, they want to build some Legacy deck. We have to show Wizards that eventually this format will collapse. We need them to reprint these cards for us.
It will end up reducing down to what Vintage is now. Kind of a niche format that a handful of people are really passionate about.
Which sucks because the format was amazing back in the day.
But the general community just can't get into it because there's just no way to get the cards. So they're either... it's either going to be do away with the reserved list, which I tend to doubt.
Yeah.
Or possibly bannings, like actually banning the old school duels in Legacy.
I would hate
that. So you're forced... but then it's just Modern.
Yeah, I would not like that.
So, we love Legacy. We don't want to disenfranchise Legacy players and we'll definitely talk about Legacy on this podcast.
We're one of you.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, Legacy is definitely not going away for many, many years. I mean, 10 or 15 years probably before we have to start worrying about things like this. But it's something that's going to be on the horizon. So anyway, I just thought I'd tackle that listener feedback. And, we're happy to have people put their comments in, even when we're dumbasses on this show.
We're dumbasses.
We definitely are. So being the dumbasses that we are, time for Pack One, Pick One. We're opening Born of the Gods again today, which we'll probably be doing for a while.
Pack opening noises.
Let's see. Ooh, we got an elemental token.
Oh, wow, that's fancy.
And another island.
Best card in the pack, yeah.
Best card in the pack. Okay. First card, Rise to the Challenge. This is the combat trick, 1 in a red. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn.
You'll play it.
Not exciting, but it's a decent trick.
Fine.
Yep. Griffin Dreamfinder. This is 3 white for a creature griffin with flying, pretty obviously, because it's a griffin. When it enters the battlefield, return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand, and it's a 1/4.
Boo.
Yeah, no. I mean, a 1/4 for 5 mana is just...
Yeah,
completely
there'll be
crashes
games
the vanilla test.
where you don't have an enchantment in your graveyard and you just paid 5 mana for a Coastline
1/4.
Chimera or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
So depressing.
I think the Coastline's actually a 1/5
Oh wow, yeah.
for a mana less,
Sorry,
less
Griffin
color restricted.
Dreamfinder.
Yeah. Nyxborn Eidolon, 1 in a black with Bestow for 4 in a black. It's a 2/1, and with the Bestow, obviously, enchanted creature gets +2/+1.
All of them are pretty solid. This one's one of the weaker ones. I'd say this is probably the...
Because the
Fourth
Bestow
best?
cost is too
Yeah.
high, yeah.
But it's still fine. It
Yeah.
can be a bear. It can be a...
Yeah, you're happy to play a 2/1 for 2.
Yep, he's
That's fine. Yep.
Black is probably the worst color in Born, though, so
Yeah.
it's weaker.
Card that I love, Charging Badger.
A card that only
Oh, yeah.
Dan loves, Charging Badger.
You can't. How could you not love this card?
This card is
One
so
green
ridiculous.
for a 1/1 with trample. It's terrible. I would never pick it. I doubt it even makes the 23rd play spot in my deck. But,
Nope, I would never play this card.
It's a badger.
It is a
And
badger.
Honey Badger don't care. How can you not love that?
Name Badger off of... what's that card? Dora Destinies.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. Moto combo.
Therigax Giant. This is for 4 and a red creature giant with tribute 2. It's a 3/3. And when it enters the battlefield, if the tribute wasn't paid, it does 5 damage to each opponent.
Wow, Tribute.
Yay, tribute.
Yay, tribute.
This guy's okay.
Yeah, I'm never
Hey.
happy to play him, but you kind of have to sometimes.
Yeah, you're not embarrassed to run it, but
Yeah.
it's not exciting. Sphinx's Disciple.
Hey.
3 blue. Here we are back at this again. The 2/2 flyer with Inspired. When he gets untapped, you draw a card.
Well, I had a discussion about this card with a friend of mine who's probably better than me at Limited, but I ended up comparing it to the 5 mana 3/3 from M14, which was legitimately a good card, Messenger Drake.
Yeah.
And this card is so much worse than Messenger Drake in every way. And once I explained it to him in that way, it became really obvious. Because a lot of games you'll play a 5 mana 2/2 flyer and never get value out of him. At least with the Messenger Drake, he's bigger and replaces himself when he inevitably dies. And this card is just not good.
Yeah. Next card is the Impetuous Sunchaser.
Flavor fail.
1 in a red, human soldier, flying haste. It attacks each turn if able, and it's a 1/1.
Why isn't he sacrificed when he gets too close to the sun?
He should
So
be.
disappointing. I don't know. It's an okay card.
Yeah, you're definitely not going to take it
No.
highly, but it can go in a deck. Ferris Band Tromper, 3 in a green, creature centaur warrior. It has Inspired. When it becomes untapped, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and it's a 3/3.
I like this guy. I actually think he's been pretty impressive so far.
Yep, he's a solid body, no
Yeah.
doubt about it. Deepwater Hypnotist, 1 in a blue, creature merfolk wizard, Inspired. When it becomes untapped, target creature an opponent controls gets -3/-0 until end of turn, and he's a 2/1.
This card is better than it looks. When I first read the card, I didn't think it's Inspired would ever happen, outside of like Springleaf Drum, which I didn't ever want to play in Limited. But it does come up, and it actually does get damage through, which is kind of cool. So, still not amazing. It's still, at the end of the day, a 2 mana 2/1.
Yeah, I haven't played with it yet, but I've had it played against me, and it does a little bit of work. It didn't really
it plays better
work
than
the
it looks
board
on paper.
state. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And again, it's a 2/1 for 2, which
Yep.
is something you're always going to be happy to run unlimited most of the time. Crypsis, 1 in a blue. For an instant, target creature you control gains protection from creatures your opponents control until end of turn, and you untap it.
Okay trick.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop it from targeted removal, which is really disappointing. So it's just a combat trick.
Yep, definitely. But not unplayable,
It's fine.
certainly. Stormcaller of Keranos, 2 in a red with haste, 1 in a blue, scry 1, and it's a 2/2.
I really like this card. If you can be red-blue, it's really powerful, and it has the crazy interaction with Flamespeaker Adept. I want to say his name is
the one that
2/3
gets the bonus in
plus
the
2
first
plus
strike
0
every
for
time.
Scry. Yeah, it's a solid card. It's aggressive. Blue-red is a fine archetype. I like it.
Yep.
It's probably my pick so far in this pack.
All right, next is Pinnacle of Rage. 4 red. For sorcery, does 3 damage to each of 2 target creatures
Whoa.
and or players.
For 6 mana, you can do something at the end of the
6
game.
damage. Yeah, I really hate this card.
Yeah, this card's not good.
I've heard other shows talk about it, and they were talking about how good it is.
Really?
Essentially 2 for winning? Yeah.
Yeah, but
And,
by the point of the game when it happens, you don't ever 2-for-1 them.
Yeah, you're never going to kill anything with it.
Yeah.
It's basically do 3 damage to target player for 6 mana. And I'm not sure I would ever play it. Well, you could hit 2 players.
Yeah, you cannot hit the same player twice,
No.
can you?
Nope. It does 3 damage to each of its targets.
So bad.
If you're playing multiplayer limited, maybe.
Oh yeah, that's a
Because
windmill
then you're
slam.
popping 2 players for 3 each.
We're trying really hard to make this card.
Yeah.
This is bad.
You know what?
Oh, that was us
Yeah.
ripping it up. Oh,
That
man.
one gets the rip because I
I'm
don't
sorry,
think
Pinnacle of
I don't
Rage.
see myself ever playing that card ever
That's
in
just
any
terrible.
format for any reason. Here's an interesting one: Raised by Wolves.
I love this card.
3 green for an enchantment aura. When Raised by Wolves enters the battlefield, put 2/2 green wolf creature tokens onto the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each wolf you control, which is
Fancy.
The buff is semi-relevant. There's not a ton of wolves besides the 2 you're making off of this.
The 3/1. I've had a lot of people just completely
The
blank
Nyxborn
on the
wolf?
fact that
It's
is
a wolf.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yep.
And you've got a good chance of getting them. They in the drafts I've done, they seem to go around more than I think they should. I don't think people are valuing the Nyxborn wolf highly enough.
Yeah, I love. It's the best green common.
Yeah.
By far, probably followed by the Pharaoh's Band. But I love Raised by Wolves. There's so little instant speed removal. You have like Retraction Helix, some
Yeah.
other tricks, but
I mean,
this card is good.
You've got to be careful with it because it's not a bestow card, so you do have the chance
Yep.
of getting 2 for 1 on it. If you're playing against blue and they've got a blue and 1 open, you can
Yeah.
get Voyage has Ended.
But it is very
Riptided,
powerful.
But it is very powerful. So as long as you're careful with it, it's definitely a solid
I've
card.
been happy with it. Yep.
And the last card we have is Fated Retribution. This is the instant for 4 white. Destroy all creatures and planeswalkers, and if it's your turn, you scry 2.
No, I do not like board sweeps in limited.
Yeah.
Limited games come down to curving out and making efficient blocks, which I guess
So
bad in this
many
format,
limited
but-
games are just winning by bashing them with creatures, and if you're blowing your own board away,
Yeah,
you're killing yourself.
especially in white. White is not defensive at all in this
No.
format. You want to be curving out and killing people with Acheron Skyguard and Wingsteed Riders.
Yeah. So I think the 3 in contention are Ferris Band Tromper, Stormcaller, Keranos, and Raised by Wolves.
I would personally take Raised by Wolves. I've been very happy with that card. You
Yeah.
will get more Pharaoh's Band Tromper type creatures in the format.
Very likely. It's a common as opposed to an uncommon, so
Mm-hmm.
that alone means you'll see that more frequently. Yeah, I think I take the Raised by Wolves here too.
It's a Heroic Enabler and bodies, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And you're getting, if it resolves, you're getting 2 bodies and
Oh
a
yeah, you
buff
feel
off of
great.
it. 2 bodies off 1 card always feels good. Now we're going to move on to Magic News. And the big news story is clearly GP Richmond.
Yeah,
We have
4,300
A
people.
lot to talk about. It was 4303 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What an enormous event. That was insane. I was watching the coverage, watched the finals match, and after the finals match, Cedric and Chapin were sitting there talking, and they were talking about how the hall was emptying out, but there was still the Sunday event going on.
Sunday Super
The
Series.
Sunday
that one?
Super
Yeah.
Series, and he's like, we've got only another 1,500 people in the hall.
That's
so
insane.
after the main event was over, the Super Sunday Series
Second GP, yeah.
had more people than most GPs. Yeah, it was
That's
amazing. And it was amazing how quickly they went from, because just last week we were talking, you were like, oh yeah, I think they'll break 1,200. They were around 1,000 last week, and then within a week they spiked to 4,300.
Take note, Wizards. Let Star City run these events.
They did as far as I know, they did a fine job of running.
I've heard
the event.
nothing but good things. Yeah,
I've heard minor quibbles, but very minor.
For 4,300 GP?
Yeah,
like,
for 4,300
it's going to
GP,
happen.
It's going to happen. I definitely agree with that, but I think they did a fabulous job of running it and prepping for it, and everything seemed to have gone over pretty well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about who won. First of all, Brian Liu. I'm hoping that's how I pronounce his last name. And he was running Kiki Pod.
Kiki Pod, a deck I was not expecting. I thought it was inferior to Melira Pod, but he proved everyone wrong.
Or he just piloted it better.
He did.
Hard
he
to
played
say.
well.
The top 8 decks were Kiki Pod, 2 Affinity decks, 4 Melira Pod decks, and 1 Blue-Red Twin deck.
Yep.
It was very centered around those cards. I think Kiki Pod is kind of interesting because I think it blends a little bit of what Melira Pod's doing and a little bit of what Twin is doing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Comes at you in multiple ways.
It's much faster than Melira Pod. You have chains where you can just go up quickly with Deceiver Exarch, untap your pod away Deceiver Exarch into Restoration Angel and stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. But
and you really kind of only need 2 cards to fire off your combo as opposed to like 3 with Melira, because you need Melira, Viscera Seer, and Murderous Redcap to get a win out of Melira Pod.
Of note, Brian did not play Phantasmal Image in his deck, and when I was looking over the list, it really surprised me because I've played against the deck a lot, and I always thought that was a staple of the deck, and I'm interested to hear how it's even possible for him to cut that card. I'm not even sure what he added for it, but it's an interesting non-inclusion.
Well, we can definitely talk about that more when we get to the Deck of the Week segment. I think we're going to talk about the Kiki Pod. So some interesting notes. At the end of day 1, the undefeated deck, there was 2 Scapeshift decks, 1 Tarmo Twin, and I'd like to talk about the guy who's playing that too.
Yeah.
A Green-Black Rock Obliterator deck, 2 Merfolk decks that I had mixed feelings about seeing, because anyway, Melira Pod, there were 3 Melira Pod decks, 1 Storm deck, which was notably absent from both the top 8 and the top 16, even though it performed really well in the week before. And Jund. So let's go back up to Tarmo Twin for a second. Diekman was playing this.
Poor guy.
So what an amazing player. I was watching the match with him against Richard Gwynn, and his play style was just amazing. He was so tight.
Yeah, it was, for those interested in watching it, it's not up on YouTube yet, but it's round 9 of the GP facing Richard Wynn, and it may be the best match of Magic I've ever seen on camera.
It was stunning.
It was amazing.
I thought in game 2 he was just straight up dead. And
no red mana for like 4 turns.
Yeah, crawled his way back.
Played perfectly.
And his body language was amazing. I remember when he top-decked the Crows and Grip he needed to disrupt the combo.
Ancient
Grudge,
he
was playing, the Ancient Grudge, to disrupt the combo. He was playing Splinter Twin, right?
Yep.
Tarmo Twin. So he got the Ancient Grudge he needed to disrupt his combo, and when he drew that card, he slumped down in his chair and put his face in his hands like he had just drawn a land. And the body language was absolutely beautiful. And then he ended up scrying off of Serum Visions, I think.
Yes.
And found his win piece for the twin. He found his Splinter Twin, put it on top, and there I noticed a fist bump.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if his opponent noticed, but he could not help doing a little fist bump.
I'd also like to point out that when he Serum Visions, he put Splinter Twin second from the top because he knew he would be remanding, and he knew his opponent would be V-clicking. So if he remanded, drew a card, and then got clicked again, he would see the twin. Right. So he had to put it second from the top. Everything he did was perfect. It was a great game of Magic.
It was amazing. And then actually his opponent didn't misplay his clique. He played it before. He played it like on his main phase instead of waiting for his opponent to draw.
He could have done some different timing things, but
I mean, not that it's a big he was 8-0 at that point. They were both 8-0, so that's impressive.
Oh, he did play well. Yeah.
Yes, they were both very good players. I don't want to take anything away from his opponent, but that was such a great match to watch.
And then Diekman faced his toughest opponent
the
for the weekend, Daylight Savings Time.
Daylight Savings Time. That felt really tragic that he ended up missing his 10th match because he didn't realize it was Daylight Savings Time.
Yeah.
And possibly, almost certainly, knocked him out
Yep.
of top 8 contention.
How do
which
you
is-
not go on tilt after that? Just missing around
Yeah.
because you didn't remember daylight savings time.
Yep, and I'm sure they announced it at some point. That goes under.
It's so
stuff
frustrating.
happens. It is. Yeah.
When I saw the top 8 and I saw Twin, I just assumed it was him.
Yeah.
But it was Jamie Park, who another deserving player. He's very good too.
Yep.
But no,
there
sorry,
were-
Patrick.
2 Merfolks, and one of them was one of only 2 decks that went 12-0 out of the gate. I thought this was. I have mixed feelings because I hate Merfolk with a deep and abiding passion.
I'm gonna say it. Merfolk is bad affinity. That's what you're basically just goldfishing these aggro hands where you sometimes destroy your opponent. I don't get it. It's so. It has like no resilience game 1, and after board it has a little bit. But why not just play affinity? It's just faster.
It is, yeah. It's interesting that it's actually a deck in Modern and not all that dissimilar from the Legacy version.
That's true.
It vials in most of the same. Like, what is there in Legacy Merfolk that's not in Modern except for Force of Will?
True Name Nemesis.
And True Name Nemesis.
Daze.
But True Name
I
Nemesis.
actually believe Daze was the most powerful card in Merfolk.
And True Name Nemesis isn't even the most powerful card in Merfolk.
No, it's not.
It actually is weaker in Merfolk than it is in some of the other decks.
Yeah.
That was just kind of fun to see those. Storm didn't make it into the top 8 or the top 16 despite its
Because
good showing.
everyone basically spent a week saying it was the best deck of all time, and everyone showed up ready for Storm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jund also made it into the top 16 in one of the day 1 undefeated decks. I don't know if it was in the top 16, but it was in one of the day 1 undefeated decks. A deck I love. It's what I play in Legacy. It's what I'd like to be playing in Modern. Honestly, I thought it was dead without Deathrite Shaman and Bloodblade. I just didn't think it was viable. I'm still not sure that it is. It was nice to see the Courser of Krufix in it because it seems like a good fit for the deck. But
I love looking at all these decks and seeing how the ban list didn't affect them as much as people thought they would. Everyone screamed, this deck is dead, this deck is dead. Jund is here, Storm is here. Storm has faced like 3 separate bannings.
yeah,
Yeah, and these decks are incredibly resilient.
so they banned Ponder Preordain and one of the Mana Accelerators,
Which also
right?
affected Twin too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and
They actually
Storm is still a deck.
they banned Seething Song and Rite of Flame. They just
So,
keep
so
banning
2
cards from this deck.
accelerators and 2 deck manipulators,
Yes,
and it's still actually a viable deck.
it's unreal.
Yeah, which maybe speaks to those cards needing to be banned.
Yeah, I enjoy Storm in the format. A lot of people complain about it because of how fast it can kill. This format's supposed to be a turn 4 kill format, but I'm fine with Storm. I like it. I like the whole metagame right now.
Another interesting thing, in the top 16 decks, only 4 of them were not either Affinity Pod or Twin variants. So those
Maybe not as diverse as I thought it was.
those 3 decks, the field I think was the decks. The decks that did make it into the top 16, outside of those were Scapeshift, the Green-Black Obliterator Rock, Blue-White-Red Control, and Blue-Black Fairies.
Wow. Hey, good for that guy.
Yeah, he probably played it very, very well. I mean, sometimes you want to kind of look at that and say, well, maybe he got a run of really good matchups, but
There was so much affinity at this tournament. I don't know how
and in
affinity.
a field that huge, that had to be more than just run of good matches. He had to have piloted it very well. And then there were none of the top 8 decks that didn't depend on artifacts or enchantments as a central engine to drive them, and only 4 out of the top 16.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think people are going to be packing a ton of enchantment artifact hate now to kind of deal with these?
I think people kind of forgot about affinity. It hadn't really been doing well. It always top 8s everything, no matter what. There'll always be that one guy playing affinity. Usually Alex Majlaton, who's like an insane affinity player. But people just forgot about it. This deck is real.
Yeah,
I
clearly it's real.
people stop playing electrolyzes. They stop playing all this hate for it in their main decks, and look what happened. The deck that and Pod just ran over the tournament. Affinity you can hate out. Pod is much harder to hate out.
Yeah.
Which
Pod is not
Yeah.
as dependent on the birthing pod itself to be a good functional deck.
no, it's a mid-range deck disguised as a combo deck. It can just beat you with Kitchen Finks and a bunch of value creatures.
Yeah.
And should we talk about the possible banning of Birthing Pod here, or 5 in the top 8? Please, Wizards, don't ban it. Don't. This meta is so good. Please,
Yeah.
just leave Birthing Pod. Don't give in to the fear. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
I think if they did like an emergency banning now, it would be hasty.
Yeah,
I think they need a few more tournaments, give people a chance to get familiar to playing against the deck to see if they can devise ways to kind of unseat it.
It is very good, and I think their only reason for banning it would be the fear that it's an engine, and sometimes engine cards are too powerful, especially ones that can tutor.
Yeah.
But
And
no.
tutoring, well, this is why Green Sun Zenith got the ban.
Yes,
It's because it tutored out whatever you needed. It was such an insane toolbox card.
and it was a ramp spell.
And it was a ramp spell, and it was repeatable because
Yes.
it shuffled back in.
Yep.
So, and Birthing Pod in a sense is repeatable because it sits on the battlefield. You can use it over and over again.
And it cheats mana
do it
costs.
right. It does cheat mana cost, yeah. So, it's possible at some point down the line they might ban it. I think it depends on what the next few Modern tournaments bring
I hope not.
to see how heavily it's skewed towards Birthing Pod decks, but
I'd like to take 5 seconds to say, please unban Jace the Mind Sculptor in Modern. Thank you. Look at the decks. Like, what is Jace actually good against in this format? Nothing.
it would not be format warping.
No, I don't think so.
Stoneforge Mystic still needs to stay
Dude,
banned.
never unban Stoneforge Mystic.
But I would be happy to see Jace get unbanned. I'd personally like to see Blood Red unbanned as well.
I'd be fine with that too.
And I was happy to see Wild Mikado get unbanned.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Zoo was basically a no-show at the event. Not a whole lot of Zoo decks were there, and none of them showed in any way.
Zoo is the type of deck people refuse to lose to. They just do. They always build their decks to beat Zoo for whatever reason. They always want to beat that like aggro deck. Every deck plays Bolt. Like
Yeah.
every deck plays Bolt or Kitchen Finks or kills
Half
Zoo
Exile.
faster than Zoo kills them.
Yeah.
That's like everything else. Yeah.
So if people get focused on like the twin pod affinity decks, is that going to open doors up for something like Zoo to make a resurgence? If people are focused on beating like those three decks because those are what was ruling the tournament, does that skew builds and skew sideboards to allow other decks to sneak their way up?
It is possible.
Is this like a rock, paper, scissors kind of thing sometimes?
I'm not sure it will be Zoo particularly, but it could open up the door for something else. Like, there's always the possibility. Now people think Storm isn't that great, and
Yeah.
then it comes back the next week and just puts like 4 in the top 8.
Yeah, it would
So-
be interesting. Kibler was playing a Zoo deck, actually. He was playing
Big Zoo, yeah.
Yeah, he finished like 200 and something, which still isn't bad out of a field of 4,300.
It's a lot of people.
That's a good show. Interesting thing that Wizards had up on the mothership, they posted what they felt were the top 5 cards from the GP Richmond, and this is kind of an interesting list. Their number 5 card was Scapeshift. It was the MVP of what I'm calling the Tier 2 decks. That is the decks that didn't hit top 8 but still performed well.
Mm-hmm.
There were 2 Scapeshift decks in the XO bracket after day 1 from a total of 12 decks. And it was the only deck that still remained undefeated at 13-0.
He remained undefeated the entire tournament and did not top 8. He thought he could double draw into top 8 and missed Unbreakers or something, yeah.
Oh, that's terrible.
But, oh wait, does he even get the PT invite? I think he does. Yeah, because he's still, he'll get the Pro Tour invite.
I think going 13-0 got him.
Yes, that's what it
that
was.
match got him the PTO.
Because
the
X2
PT
was a
invite, yeah.
PT invite. Oh man, that's going to be so frustrating for that guy though. Hey, I just went 13-0 at a GP. Let me double draw in.
No.
No, sorry.
You've got to be careful with math on those things sometimes,
Yeah.
especially in a field that big.
Yep.
Their number 4 card was Spellskite. This served double duty in the twin decks, both protecting their twin combo and protecting against the twin combo in the mirror, or for other decks that ran it too, protecting against the twin combo. Because as you know, Spellskite has an ability that lets you redirect spells to it.
Yes. And this is like the unsung hero of Modern to me. People don't realize they're losing to this card. They really don't. They just see an 0-4 wall that has an ability, and
It dodges
it does
bolt.
so much. Yeah, it dodges
does.
bolt. People run Flame Slash to kill it. Like,
Yeah.
that isn't- yeah.
I saw that. It's one of the reasons why some people I think are running Ancient Grudge. I mean, Ancient Grudge has value anyway,
Yep.
but you need to be able to kill the Spellskite and the thing you want to actually
Yes.
destroy.
It protects against combo. It protects your combo. It does so much. It's an 0-4. It blocks,
Was
hard to
Affinity
kill.
running that in the sideboard?
I do believe the two top 8 decks are both running at least one copy of Spellskite. I believe 2.
Yeah, I would think that would kind of be an easy one to put in the sideboard of Affinity.
Yep.
The number 3 card, Thoughtseize.
Thoughtseizes.
I love this card.
Boring.
Best all-purpose sideboard card, they were calling it. I love Josh Utterlayton's quote. It forces uninteractive decks to interact with you.
Yeah, it does.
It does. It's just, there's not much to say about it. It's just a solid piece of hand disruption.
How many were there? Like, I didn't see many main deck. I know there were
all
played in the
sideboards,
sideboard of Affinity played it.
I'd have to look up the green-black Obliterator
I'm sure
rock
that deck played
that
it.
probably main decked it.
Yeah.
But all the rest of them were sideboard.
Pod plays usually 3. Yeah.
Yeah. The number 2 card, Arcbound Ravager. Some of the legacy builds, I think, weren't even running this card a while ago. There was some that did, some didn't. The thing about it is it always allowed for profitable trades with your combat because you're dumping +1/+1 tokens. And it fights Kataki's War Wage in a great way. Now, Kataki's War Wage gives all your artifacts an upkeep of 1.
Yes.
So it basically destroys Affinity because they have to spend 1 mana to keep all their stuff alive.
Yep.
But if you have a Ravager out, you just sack them.
Yeah.
Pay 1 mana, sack what you don't care about, dump counters on the Ravager, and you've just got a bigger guy.
It's the reason why Stony Silence is so much better against Affinity than Kataki. Good Affinity players can play through Kataki, and you don't want your hate card to be something that good players can play through.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, Arcbound Ravager is a very powerful card, and it's really hard to play against. It gives the Affinity players so many lines that sometimes the opponent won't see. Sometimes people will tap out, die to a Ravager, sacrificing everything, including itself, to put counters on a Inkmoth Nexus and just killing you out of nowhere.
Yep.
It's a very powerful, versatile card. For 2 mana, it's cheap too.
Absolutely. And what they were calling their number 1 card, I think this is kind of funny that they did this.
Birthing Pod.
Not
no,
Birthing
sorry.
Pod. Shatterstorm. Great metagame call on Lou's part to play. You listened to his interview when he drew the hand that he won the finals with.
Yep.
And it was like land Shatterstorm. He's like, I saw that and I had to keep it.
Yeah.
And his Affinity opponent did end up getting a bit of a slow start. He mulliganed down, I think, and then Lou just blew him out with Shatterstorm.
Yep.
He was just barely establishing a board, and Lou's just like, nope, blow up everything.
Shatterstorm is good against Affinity, but sometimes it's too slow. His opponent had the draw where Shatterstorm was good, and it just blew out the deck.
Was amazing. It does really punish a deck that tends to want to overextend by its very nature.
Yeah.
That's what Affinity does. You just vomit your hand onto the board and win.
Why is Birthing Pod not number 1?
I don't.
There were 20 copies in the top 8.
I don't know.
Oh, well.
So that was GP Richmond. A great event, and as huge Magic fans, we love seeing events that run this big. Definitely is getting interest in Modern, which is going to be a long-term format. So The other thing I want to talk about in the Magic news was an announcement from Wizards about their new Clash Packs, and that Garruk, by the art, is going to be the main Planeswalker in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about Garruk? What are your emotional connection to the big guy? The big burly guy.
I've always felt Garruk Wildspeaker was one of the most powerful cards in Cube, so I hope they reprint him. I never got to play with him in Standard, so it'd be cool if we got to see him again. And I'd like slightly more streamlined, powerful Planeswalkers. I like what he does for the decks he's in. So
yeah, I think it's
very
likely they'll print a new Garruk. I mean, Chandra got a new iteration, right?
Garruk has had, 4 iterations?
Something like that.
Just come up with a different Planeswalker. There has to be someone else green in the world.
Not, as far as the pantheon of Planeswalkers go, Garruk is not my favorite, and not because of any of his cards. I just think his character's derpy. I mean, this is totally a flavor thing.
I'm big.
Big green eyed animals. It's just not very interesting or exciting. I'm sure he thrills some people. Not me.
But Rocky.
So, and the other thing they mentioned was these Clash Packs that they're doing. Now, the Clash Pack is going to be one of the primary product. It's not going to replace their event decks, but what they're going to do is start alternating with the event decks. And what you get in a Clash Pack is you get 2 60-card decks that you can play against each other, and that you can merge them together, some cards from some cards from another, to build one deck that's on the same kind of power level as an event deck.
Yeah.
The MSRP is like $30. I think it looks like a pretty good product. It's good for introducing new players because you get 2 decks. It'll come with 6 foils.
Yeah. I really love that
good.
they put Planeswalkers in these.
Yeah.
Because they're the most obscure card type in Magic, and once you grasp that, it's the other cards fall into place, I think.
Yeah, the other cards are much more intuitive.
Yes.
Planeswalkers are very unintuitive in the whole frame of how Magic works.
Yep.
I remember I was not actively playing when they introduced them.
No, neither was I.
I remember coming back to the game, looking at this card and going, the hell is this? How am I, like, gaining resources by putting plus counters on this and getting a benefit? I was like, this just doesn't make any sense to me.
I saw Jace Beleren and thought the card was terrible.
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't get this. This is so bad. And then he ended up being great. But
then you use them, and you're like, oh, okay. And, eventually the spiky side takes over, and you say, yeah, this feels weird, but it works.
Repeatable effects that were difficult to kill. Ones that protect themselves. Usually too good, but yeah. They're cool.
So you end up accepting it and you play with it. I
You
know
move on.
people still that refuse to play with Planeswalkers. More casual players.
Yeah, casual, yeah.
But I definitely have a spiky side. That's something we should talk about at some point.
Spikes?
What kind of player are you? Where do you fit in the psychographics?
Spike?
You're just straight spike.
Yeah, I hate Commander. I hate casual formats. I play Cawblade, Rug Delver.
Spike.
Yeah, Spike.
So for you, winning is fun.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
I like good games of Magic. Just high-level interactive games.
Yeah. I definitely enjoy that. I'm not sure I fit into any one of the demographics because I love the kind of games you're talking about.
Yeah.
I love playing at competitive level and really challenging myself and playing well and having to think through my plays and feeling like because I made the right decisions in certain circumstances I won the game. I really enjoy that kind of feeling.
That's the best feeling for me.
Yeah.
Thinking I earned that game.
Yes. Yeah, having wins that you feel like you earned definitely feels good. But I also like building quirky donkey decks that are just like based around silly stuff sometimes, and I enjoy that.
I've made some interesting decks.
You have, yeah. I remember the first week you came to the FNM with the life gain.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, for FNMs I like to play something ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was an interesting deck.
Which is a good place to play things that are ridiculous.
Yep.
So our Deck of the Week section, we are going to talk about the modern winning deck, which was Kiki Pod. First of all, what archetype of deck is this? Where do you think it fits? Is it combo control aggro? Is it a blend?
This is much closer to pure combo than Melira Pod is. You want to move up the chain from 1 to 5 mana, eventually making infinite Restoration Angels with Kiki Jiki. And the way Kiki Jiki works is it's a 5 mana 2/2 with haste. You tap it to make a copy of another creature on the another non-legendary?
Non-legendary.
Non-legendary creature. So when you do this, you have a Restoration Angel in play, which is a 4 mana 3/4 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you blink a creature.
So exile it and then return it to the battlefield immediately.
Yes. So you copy Restoration Angel with Kiki Jiki, and when the new token comes into play, the copy, you blink the Kiki Jiki, returning it to play.
The token
untapped.
copies also have haste.
That is very important. That actually
very
matters.
important.
Yeah. And then you continue this chain and eventually attack with millions and billions, but not infinite Restoration Angels.
A very, very large number of Restoration Angels you attack with. So yeah, it's definitely a key. So obviously the key cards, Restoration Angel, Kiki Jiki, and/or Splinter Twin, which is. Pardon me.
Did he actually play Splinter Twin in this version?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Oh, probably
no.
not. Probably not. Yeah. He didn't play Splinter Twin in this one. Splinter Twin in the Twin decks functions the same way.
It is the same card, basically.
As Kiki Jiki does. Yeah.
Yep.
So Restoration Angels, Kiki Jiki. Essentially, your mana dorks are the other key cards, and then the Birthing Pod to work your way up the chain.
And light disruption in this one. There's a lot less disruption in this version than there is in Kiki Pod. And I personally do not feel this deck is better than Melira Pod. It might have been a great metagame call because the number of interactive decks in the format was so low that maybe it was just better to just be fast.
How is this deck different from Melira Pod? First of all, I think Melira Pod's combo is a little more complicated. There's basically 3 pieces. You need Melira.
That is actually not true. This has really intricate turns. where you can make a lot of ridiculous things happen, especially with Deceiver Exarch and blinking it, untapping pods, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you screw up this chain, you're dead. If you screw up a Melira pod, well, you have some guys in play. This one, if you screw it up, you're gone, yeah.
Right. Which pushes this more towards the pure combo kind of
Yes.
thing. Melira pod also, I think, is a deck that can win without pod.
It can. I don't think this deck has that great of a chance. It can randomly draw a Restoration Angel into Kiki and kill someone. It also plays 3 chords, I want to say. Let's check.
Scroll down.
Yep, 3 quarter
Yeah.
callings. So it does have other ways to tutor for the combo, but you're not winning a game without the combo, most likely. It's really hard to just beat down someone with a Voice of Resurgence.
Right. And Melira pod, you've got Kitchen Finks and Murderous Redcap that can just start swinging if you need them to.
Yep.
Oh, one of the funny things in his sideboard, too. The,
Look at that card.
yeah, Zealous
Zealous
Conscripts.
Conscripts, untap
That-
your own pod.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really
I
cool.
remember that. And was this the one that was running...
Please tell me it's Fiery Justice. That one?
I thought he was running a Baloth in this, too. No, it must
No,
have been
Kiki
another
pod.
Kiki Melira pod.
Melira pod generally plays
Yeah,
the
it was
Baloth
the
on the board,
Baloth
yeah.
to bash in with. It just bashes down.
Yeah, there was actually on camera.
That was Diekman's game.
Was it
He had
Diekman's
That's
game?
how he had his opponent at 8 in that game that he was losing. He was
Oh,
actually
okay.
up in life. His opponent was down at 8.
Just die to a 4/4.
And he ended up dying to a 4/4, yeah. Oh, and then so sad. I saw someone, for some reason, somebody was playing, was it Swan Song, the new blue counterspell, and your opponent gets a bird?
Yeah, was this the Merfolk match?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
The Merfolk deck
watch that
was-
match and then tell yourself you want to play Merfolk.
Yeah. The guy lost because he had to counter his opponent's spells and give them birds in the process.
Yep, and then died to him. No,
And
that
then-
was the
and
match with the
then die.
Baloth. That was the one I saw.
That was the one with the
Yeah.
Baloth. Yep. The
Yep.
Baloth had already beat the guy down. And his life was so low, and he had to counter his opponent's spells or he was just going to die. And in the process of countering them, he put swans into play that his
Yeah.
opponent just killed him with.
He was just like, I'm going to play Scape Shift, and the guy's like, I'll
That's right, it was
Swan
against
Song it
Scape
and
Shift,
die,
yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
That was horrifying. Don't play that card. Why was he playing that card? It's interesting to note, too, in this the Kiki Pod deck that aside from the Mana Dorks, most of the cards in the deck are like 1 or 2 of most of the creatures. Well, and Restoration Angel itself.
Mm-hmm.
Again, leaning to that kind of toolbox tutoring kind of thing that the pod decks all definitely do.
You know what these decks remind me of? Survival of the Fittest in Legacy.
Yeah.
And remember what happened to Survival of the Fittest?
Got banned.
Yeah, please don't though. I love Pod. I don't even play it, but I love it.
It's a fun. The matches are really fun to watch.
Yeah,
Definitely. It's a very
creates
interesting deck.
really intricate games where you have to know what Pod can do. I love that
Yeah.
from being an opponent of a deck, knowing exactly what my opponent can do, and playing around it. Great
It's
games.
tough. Yeah, it's very interesting. It reminds me, and I was thinking about this with the Storm decks too, but it reminds me a little bit about playing High Tide, which I did a bit in Legacies. You really have to know all your pieces, what you need to go get, when you need to go get it. Am I ready to combo off? There's a lot of thought process like that.
There's a lot of odds playing too.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of one-landers kept by the Storm players, and they got there most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go deep. We're going to talk about, and kind of keeping on the theme, playing at large events. Neither one of us has played at a 4,300 man event.
No.
Absolutely not. But we have played at pretty large events, GP, Star City events.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the basic things for people that have just played at F&M or maybe a PTQ or a GPT. And you're maybe 40 people or something like that. When you're stepping up to a multiple 100-person event, the situations are very different. And I just kind of want to go over some of the basic stuff. The two basic things, like almost everything we're going to talk about, it falls into like one of two categories. Avoiding pointless violations and game losses, and then your mental and physical performance.
Yes.
These are like the two keys to surviving one of these events. Avoiding game losses for dumb reasons is such an easy thing to do.
It
and
is,
so
yeah.
often overlooked. I remember in one of the early Star City events I was in, my deck list was wrong. And I got a game loss. I ended up winning the match that I went into the game loss with, so it ended up being okay for me. But it's still something that shouldn't happen. So let's talk about deck lists, since I mentioned it. First suggestion, have your deck list done the day before, And have a buddy double check it.
Yeah, you're writing down the cards in your deck onto a piece of paper. It sounds like it's impossible to screw up, but it happens a lot.
It happens all the time.
Late changes to the deck, just writing Elspeth Knight Errant instead of Elspeth Sun's Champion or something.
Or doing something... Well, first of all, when you write down your deck list, do it properly. Don't just write Elspeth.
That is a mistake. Do not write Elspeth.
Some people are just lazy that way because that's how they're thinking in their head. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Write down the proper name of the card. I'd like actually to go on... There's a few websites that actually have PDF documents of deck lists that you can type them and fill them out and print them out. So it's all clear. It's all done. Some of them will actually tally up the counts for you so you know you've got the right number. So count the cards you've written down. Have someone look it over. It only takes someone 5 minutes to look over your deck list for you. Get a second pair of eyes on it because you've been testing, you've been building this deck, you've been making changes. You get a little blurry after a while.
Allow yourself to play Magic. Don't
Yes.
lose to rules violations like that. Yeah.
Another big one. Be sure the only cards in your deck box, are your deck and your sideboard.
This is a big one. I see people put just random like draft cards and stuff they intend to use as tokens, but if your opponent sees you with a stack of cards in your sideboard, he can't be sure that those cards are actually part of your deck. You could be slipping those cards in and out, and you just have to remove that thought from your opponent. You don't want them to ever think there's anything fishy going on. So
Absolutely.
Just eliminate it. Just play with just the cards in your deck.
The one lone exception to this is if you go to a large event and they put out promo cards, and you get a promo card like a Batterskull to GP Richmond, that they said is okay to have in the deck box. The promo that you got
I don't
at
even
the
feel
event.
comfortable with that.
Legally, it's an exception, but I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. When you're sitting down to play, the only cards you should have in that deck box are the ones you're playing with.
Yeah, it's
And
like, oh,
again,
weird. That Batterskull is really good in this situation.
This is such an easy way to avoid getting a stupid penalty or a game loss or even a match loss.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it's just not worth doing. If you're going to be selling cards to vendors, and this kind of falls into the same thing, bring a separate deck box from the one you're playing.
Yep.
Put the cards in that. Easy to not have them in your regular deck box. Just bring some little crappy deck box. Keep them separate. Buy new card sleeves and have extras with you.
Always.
Always, always, always. They're going to tear. You don't need to get game losses and match losses for quote-unquote marked decks. You don't want to have to stop in the middle of a match because you've torn a sleeve and you don't have one to replace it with. Just buy new ones.
Bringing sleeves from 2006 that you drew smiley faces on. Yeah.
It's worth the extra $8 or whatever just to have fresh sleeves with you for the day.
A lot of these are just peace of mind, too. If you know you did all these things right, that's something else you don't have to worry about through the tournament.
Exactly. Yep. Keeping your mind clear. For me personally, this one's a big one for me, and I know a lot of people don't do it, but if your deck requires them, bring tokens. Please, just don't tear little slips of paper or put just like dice down when just bring the tokens with you.
Dice frustrate me the most when opponents ask me if they can use dice for their tokens, and then I have no idea if they're tapped or not. Like, I can remember board states, but sometimes you can't. If there's, especially with the new Elspeth, you'll see like 5 dice and then 3 dice because they couldn't like fit it all into one, and I'm just like, which ones are tapped?
Which aren't tapped? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That really, really frustrates me. It helps to keep your board state represented clearly, and that just helps everybody because you're not going to make mistakes. Your opponent isn't going to make mistakes, and clear communication is so important.
Also, sometimes it doesn't register. If you have dice, I've seen people have dice, and I've attacked into them and just killed them because they didn't realize that dice was actually a token at that point.
It was something you could block.
Yeah.
That being said, bring some dice with you. You don't know when you're going to want to keep track of counters on a planeswalker or +1 counters on a creature you control or something. I mean, if you have cards in your deck that do these things, like if you're running a planeswalker, bring some dice to put on it. It's really easy. Get a little brick of 6-sided dice or whatever.
Yeah.
And just have them with you. Don't be borrowing them from your opponent. That way you've got dice to roll to see who's going to go or draw first.
Also, along with that, bring a pad and paper.
That's coming later.
Oh, it is coming later.
It's
oh,
in the
okay.
list,
Yeah,
yes.
don't be like the crackhead, like roaming around looking for dice and paper.
Yeah.
Hey man, got any dice?
That one I guess could have gone under the prep, but I put that at the tournament. But
All right, we'll talk about that.
we will get
then.
to that. So also under the preparations, the mental and physical performance end. Get plenty of rest the night before.
Mm-hmm.
These events, especially if you're as an event like a GP where you're potentially going to go into day 2, these are long, grueling events. You wouldn't think that sitting and playing cards would exhaust you, but it's mentally very exhausting, and that will drain you. So get as much rest as you can the night before. Keep in your normal routines. If you usually exercise, like in the morning, getting some exercise before going to one of these events is really good.
Would you go to work on 4 hours of sleep? You don't want to.
Some of us,
You're going to feel
no.
miserable. Yeah, you're going to feel terrible.
Yeah.
These are 8-9 hour long tournaments.
Yeah, they will really wear you down. Pack food and plenty of water. Again, these events are marathons, not sprints. The food can be a little tricky because sometimes the venues don't want you to bring food. So you may have to sneak it in your backpack or whatever.
So
but
bring cherry Pepsi and
water.
soft pretzels.
Water.
Cherry
not
Pepsi and soft
water.
pretzels.
Bring drink and lots of water. It will hydrate your body. It will help keep you thinking clearly.
Lightly salted pretzel.
Water. In preparation, again, this is the mental end of things. Study the format. Get to know the top cards. Watch streaming videos. Know what all the cards do. You don't have to know every single card that's legal in Modern because 90% of them are not ever going to be on the table against you.
Know the relevant ones.
Know the relevant ones. Know the top decks. Look at the cards that are in them. Know what gets played, what they do. Just be familiar with the event. If you're going into a big limited tournament, study the set beforehand. Watch streaming videos if you can of people playing sealed and draft to get really familiar with the environment that you're going into. If you're playing constructed, pick a deck and stick with it. And then practice. And that goes for limited events too. Play lots of sealed. The more familiar you are with an environment, the better you'll be able to make decisions. Because the thing is, you can think your way through different decisions. You
True.
can analyze situations. You can say, this is this situation. This is maybe what I need to do here. The more frequently you see the same situations come up over and over again, the decision making becomes more intuitive. You don't have to think as hard about decisions that you've seen 100 times before.
I have a situation I'd like to talk about this. This was round, I believe, 14 of the GP, where Jamie Park is playing against Michael Majors, who's on Storm, and Park is on Twin. There's a point where Jamie Park plays either Deceiver Exarch or Pestermite to tap down his land, leaving him with just a mountain. Now, this is a situation where he can untap and go for the combo sometimes, but there's a lot of decks where he can't, and he knows he can't, because if you know that decks like these generally play Dismember, you don't go for it. But by knowing that Storm generally won't have a card like Dismember, won't have a card like Spell Pierce or the like, he was able to go for it, and he was able to win the turn before he died. And knowing what your opponent could have and what they can do, a lot of times can be more important than being perfect with your deck. You can't go into a tournament and have no idea how Melirapod wins. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you don't understand how the deck beats you, you cannot disrupt it. And that's one of the big things to know before tournaments is just what cards do, what's in the format. Even
Absolutely.
in limited, could he have the Giant Growth? Well, you should probably know that.
Yeah.
It's not even in the format, but there's a lot of
Triton
situations
tactics.
like that. Something like that, Triton Tactics.
Yeah.
Just
Has your opponent tapped out and left a single blue open?
Be
what
aware
could
of
he be
it.
representing? Yeah.
because if you don't know that card exists, you just walk into it and get blown out. And no matter how good you are, you're not going to win that game. You just get blown out by Triton Tactics.
Yeah, I ran into a situation at the last FNM because I've been playing the Mono Black Devotion deck, and one of the guys came with Bant Dudes.
Yep.
And it's a Bant Prime Speaker, basically, or Bant Walkers, I forget. But I had never played against the deck before. I wasn't super familiar with it, so disrupting it was much more difficult. because I had to think much harder about every single thing that I was doing while I was playing.
Do I Doomblade this creature? Is it the best creature in his deck, or do I have to save this Doomblade?
Right. A perfect example of this is he played out a Voice of Resurgence. And I had Doomblade and BioBlight in my hand. And I almost cast the Doomblade to kill the Voice of Resurgence, and then my mind said, no, you don't do that against the Voice of Resurgence because he gets another token. But then I realized later on, I could have Doombladed the Voice of Resurgence, untapped and BioBlighted both of the tokens away. So you find interactions like that where normally 90% of the time, killing a Voice of Resurgence on your opponent's turn is completely the wrong thing to do.
It's usually
but in this case, it would have been exactly the right thing to do. So the more you see these decks, the more familiar you are with these situations, the more you'll realize where in this certain situation it's the right decision to make. So now we're going to move on to things that are going on at the tournament. And let's skip right to the pen and notepad. Because that was on my list. So I guess maybe that could have been in the prep, but there's a lot of reasons you want this.
We're here now, and that's what matters.
Have a nice pen and a good pad of paper. Primarily, first of all, more than anything, write down life totals.
Don't use dice.
Don't use dice. Keep track of your opponent's life total and yours.
Dice get knocked over. It's a disaster. Just write down life totals. Also, with a pad, it allows you to do things like write down cards in hand, cards you've seen, cards revealed from Dark Confidant, so you know exactly what they have.
Or a Thoughtseize.
A G-Probe, Gitaxian Probe.
Yep, you can write these cards down. And another thing with the life totals, too, if there's a discrepancy, if a disagreement about what the life totals are, you can backtrack through the turns as you've written each one of them down and see where the discrepancy comes up. Oh, I missed a
fetch land, a Force of Will.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to your opponent's life, you can keep track of storm counts or infect counts, things like that. So you'll have some idea of what his storm count is, what his mana is. And you can make notes during your game. Especially if you're playing against a deck you haven't seen before or a certain player, make notes during the game. And then you can go back and look at these notes. Did I win? Did I lose? Is there some play I could have made better? How did this deck beat me?
Yeah, say your opponent's playing Jund in Legacy, and you see the Grove of the Burnwillows. Well, you can obviously put him on Punishing Fire in his deck, too. So then you can jot that down and use that for sideboarding. Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing for the notepads. It's essential.
Because knowledge is power.
Cultivating good playing habits. And this is something you're going to do at the tournament, but you should be doing this all the time. Especially if you're going to be playing in these big events. These are habits that you need to get into. So again, you're not thinking about them. You're not using brain power at the event to do these things. First of all, count your deck and your sideboard before each match.
I do this every time. I've never once not done this.
Every time.
I always look through my side. I never look through the main deck. I always look through the sideboard and make sure it's the exact 15.
Yep.
Really easy.
Check your sideboard. Play with 15 cards in your sideboard. I know you don't have to anymore. Do it anyway.
Yeah. Put a Questing Feldergriff in your sideboard. Make it look sweet. As long as it's legal. As long as it's legacy.
Run 15 islands. Okay. Whatever you have to do. Just
play
make sure
Belcher
you have 15.
and run 15 islands in your sideboard.
And then you never have to think about, is this a deck that I had a full sideboard? Did I have a smaller sideboard with this deck? There's no confusion. You just do 15. Even if you're not going to use all 15 spots. Just have them filled with basic lands if you want.
Yeah, it's fine.
Each and every time before each match, just count it. Communicate all of your actions clearly with your opponent. This is so important, and so many people don't do this, and it leads to judge calls, it leads to violations, it leads to gameplay violations. You're not allowed to gotcha your opponent because they didn't understand what you were doing. That's cheating. That's a disqualification. And you're a better player than that. I'm going to tell you right now, listening to this, you are a better player than that. You don't need to gotcha your opponent because you mumbled something or you did something really quick and he didn't catch it. You're better than that. You're a better player than that. And it's illegal, it's cheating, and it's not what you want to do.
Yeah.
You want your opponent and yourself, and you can muddle things for yourself too. You want the game state to be completely clear at all times as much as possible.
I generally announce every card I play.
I announce land drops.
I announce land drops too.
Yeah.
Because there are situations where Shahar Shenhar, the GP, played a Plains when he should have played an island, and did not announce island even though he intended to, and then attempted to cast a Vaporkin. Had he announced island and cast the Vaporkin, the judge could have allowed the island to be put into play, because that was intent. By putting the Plains into play, then casting the Vaporkin, there was no way for it to backtrack to a point where he could have played the island and played the Vaporkin.
Yep. Announce your triggers all the time. Be aware of triggers that are yours and announce them all the time, even if they're ridiculously small or things you feel should happen automatically. Like
also, remember your triggers.
Remember
Yay!
your trigger. Big key for me, any kind of upkeep trigger, I just plop a die right on top of my deck, so I can't even draw a card. So in standard right now with Thassa, you scry every upkeep.
Yeah.
Just put a die on top of your deck, and that way you can't physically draw the card. In Legacy and Modern, I run Dark Confidant a lot. Just put a die on top or Bitter Blossom.
Yeah, I missed a Thassa trigger once, and I felt so stupid.
Yep.
Like, they're game-changing. Like, it seems so minor, but if you miss that, and you draw your 7th island and die, you're going to be pretty mad. So, like, It's not weak to use the die. It's not like you have a poor memory. There's just so much going on that you can just take that off your mind.
Yeah, and again, there's so many decisions to make. It's a mundane thing that you don't need to use processing power in your brain to deal with. You may as well free that space up for something else.
It's so funny when people put die on top of their deck to remember a pack trigger and just move the die and draw it.
Don't be that guy.
I've seen that a lot. It's really funny.
That's funny. Yeah, don't be that guy. Don't let your opponent rush you.
Oh, yeah.
Slow play and fractions are really, really hard to get. You have to really be dogging it intentionally. If you've got a complicated decision you need to make, don't let your opponent, because people will push you, they'll pressure you. They're, oh, look how much time is off the clock. Come on, it's my turn yet. I've seen people I've done something on my main phase, and then they're like, is it my turn yet? And like, are trying to untap their land.
Yeah.
It's like, no, relax. I've got something to do in my second main phase.
Yeah.
Just sit back, let me take my turn, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, remember last game when you tried to fetch and took 4 minutes to find a tropical island? It's like, yeah, you're part of the reason this game's going to time.
Yeah, don't let people rush you. And that being said, don't let your opponent slow play you. If they're dogging it to gain some kind of an advantage, call a judge, and you'll be able to tell.
I'm going to read Jace the Mind Sculptor 17 times because I have no idea what it does.
Yep. When you are in Game 3 and they're in an obviously losing state and they're pushing to draw the clock out so they can get a draw instead of a loss, you'll know. You'll tell they'll be doing stupid things, they'll be taking more time, and just don't let them do it.
There's a time and place for taking your time and within reason.
When your opponent has an obvious decision to make or a simple thing to do, or all they're doing is like playing a land or something like that for the turn, when they don't have complicated decisions to work with and they're still taking 30 seconds or 40 seconds or a minute to take their turn, then you know they're dogging it.
Yeah.
They pick up their sideboard 20 times and look through it. No, dude, you sideboarded it out, all right? Can I have my turn now? Next big thing when you're at the tournament, and this kind of harkens back to something I've already said, but the judges are your friends. Do not be afraid to call a judge over if you need one, at all. They're there to make sure the tournament stays fair and runs well and to support the players.
Yeah, they're there for you. They're not there to, they're not this extra opponent you have to play against.
No, absolutely not. They are not the fun police.
No.
And these all kind of fall under call a judge. Read any cards that you don't know or aren't sure about. Again, this is about knowing what the cards do. But if you're not sure, if they're altered cards, altered art cards on them, if they're foreign and you don't know them, you don't know what they do, call a judge.
I generally play a lot of Japanese cards in my deck, and every time my opponent has a question about exactly what the card does, I have them get the oracle from the judge. Because, say I leave something out, that is so scummy.
Yes.
If Japanese Electrolyze, I could say it deals 2 damage and I draw a card. Which, it does deal 2 damage and draw a card, but that's not exactly what it does. It can do it up to 2 targets.
Right.
And that's very different. So, if you need an oracle ruling, a judge can always give you one. And it's just, it's safer. Don't let your opponent tell you what a card does either.
Absolutely not. I've had foreign cards and they've
just
cheated
absurd.
with them for advantage.
Yeah.
But casting instants, sorceries as instants, things like that.
Timely reinforcements. Always an instant, always gain 6, always put 3 tokens into play.
Absolutely.
Japanese timely reinforcements.
So always call a judge for that. If you have any question about your current game state or how cards interact with each other, don't hesitate to call a judge on that.
And be honest. Tell them exactly what is happening, because they can't see the board state. And if you're being incredibly vague and mistelling the truth, they're not going to be happy with you. They can't see what happened. They're there to help you. So tell them exactly what happened. If you made a mistake, let them know. Say you drew an extra card. Accept it.
Yeah.
You screwed up. You drew an extra card. You'll get that game loss. Go back and win the match.
If you want to turn the judges from being your friends into being your enemies real quick, lie to them.
Yeah.
See, they suddenly will not be your friend anymore.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And again, this kind of ties into that. If you make a gameplay error, call a judge on yourself right away.
Yes.
Well, a lot of times violations can be reduced to warnings that might be game losses otherwise.
Yep.
And it keeps you honest. They'll note that. Mm-hmm. They'll pay attention to the people that will call on themselves. And I've seen a lot of people do this on camera.
I've seen Kibler do it a lot.
Yeah.
LSV called a judge on himself and lost a game.
Got a game loss for drawing an extra card.
Drawing an extra card.
I completely remember that. So just call the judge.
Yep.
Call the judge on yourself. And the other big thing that you want to keep into consideration when you're at the event is avoiding theft and loss. First of all, if you're bringing your stuff in a backpack, don't leave it on the floor behind you or under your chair.
Yeah.
Put it between your feet or wrap a strap around your leg or something like that. We like to think that the Magic community as a whole is all fine, upstanding people. And the vast majority of them, I think, are. But in any given community, there are thieves and scumbags.
There was a ring of people who actually was stealing stuff at GPs, and they'd just walk up and kick your bag out and have someone else come pick it up. And it happens.
Yep.
And it's scary, but just be aware of it. Like, if that bag's between your legs, that doesn't happen. If that bag is tied around the peg of your chair, it doesn't happen.
Keep track of all your things.
Yes.
Do never leave your deck on a table and walk away from it. Just don't.
I actually had that happen with a limited deck when I was playing it. I think a PTQ, where I left my deck on the table to ask a judge a question. When I came back, my deck was gone.
Wow.
And that was a whole big fiasco, but we won't talk about that.
Except you just did. Personally, I recommend not bringing more cards than you need to an event. Don't show up with like half a dozen binders if you're actually playing in the event. You're going to be lugging them around all day. You're going to be worried about them. It's going to be distracting physically and mentally, and you don't need to do that. If you're not playing in the main event, if you're just maybe playing a side event, you want to do a lot of trading, then you can bring binders with you. But if you're playing in the event, don't bring like half a dozen big binders with you. It's just stupid. If you do want to bring some trades with you, get one of the little smaller binders, ones with the little pages that hold 4 cards each or something like that. And you can keep that. It's small. It's easy to transport. You just bring a few cards that you know are popular that you're willing to get rid of. And that way it keeps it compact. And the last thing I want to say on this, as far as avoiding theft and loss, do not put drinks and food on top of the table. They'll tell you not to do this.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Why would you do it? Why?
You do not want to be responsible for destroying someone else's $1,500 deck.
It happens. It does.
Again, this falls, and so much of this stuff falls under stuff that's easy to avoid.
Yeah. Don't be eating a Twinkie at like the table and just like squirt out and just be like, oh no, and get Twinkie all over your opponent's card.
Oh yeah, or pizza and it's like grease dripping all over everything, or just reaching for your water and tipping it over and having it pour all over the table. It's just so easy to make these things not happen.
When Jim slammed the table and the water bottle went up in the air in slow motion and came down and just splashed all over the legacy cards. Oh my god.
Yep.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Refrain. Take a sip, put it on the ground.
Please refrain. Yes, absolutely. So do you have anything else to say about playing in big events, Mike?
No, just be smart and avoid game losses.
Avoid dumb game losses. Give yourself every advantage that you can by minimizing the amount of brain power that you need for these silly things, these nonsense things. And
while your 3 foil islands may look really cool, it's probably better just to play with non-foil islands. Foils can sometimes be warped, so if you're going to play foils, have them be scattered like different cards,
Yeah.
or play all foils or no foils.
Yeah, there was that on camera, right? The guy that he was playing in a limited, and he brought all his own foil lands.
Brought just foil lands, so
And they were like, this deck is marked.
yeah, because you could tell.
Clearly see, because they were so warpy.
At a Star City, I got a game loss or something for having a foil forked bolt that
Yep.
was very clearly different from the rest of my deck, and I just couldn't find a non-foil one. But hey, sometimes you have to.
All right, that's enough for our in-depth segment. And now we're going to do our random card of the week.
Oh boy! It's so random.
Ready for this?
Oh my god, what could it be?
Spin the Gatherer wheel. Whoops.
That's not random.
Spin the Gatherer wheel. Tick, 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 tick.
Dang!
Chain of Acid. This is from Onslaught. This is 3 and a green for a sorcery. Destroy target non-creature permanent. Then that permanent's controller may copy the spell and may choose a new target for that copy. For no cost.
Yeah,
That's interesting because this immediately reminded me of Chain Lightning.
Chain Lightning.
That you can pay 2 mana to throw back at your opponent, but you can just keep throwing this back and forth until everything's gone.
Yeah, there was a whole cycle of them that did obscure things. One of them was 2 mana, target player discards 2 cards, and then they can rebound it. The red one, you actually had to discard a card, I believe, and the blue one, you had to sack a permanent. Chain of Vapor, that's the one that saw constructed play.
Yeah. Yep.
Second land, I'm sorry.
So this is a dicey card to play because your opponent can throw it right back at your face for just nothing. Of course, then they're giving you the opportunity to burn it back at you, but wow. This is really, I'm not sure where you would want this card.
You're going to rebound this to me, I'm going to rebound it to you. And it just keeps going on forever as they kill all their
I
permanents.
suppose if you gave all your permanents Shrouders, made them all indestructible.
That sounds like a lot of effort to play Chain of
Yeah,
Acid.
it really does. And then you're paying 3 and a green just to destroy something.
It does kill Planeswalkers now, so it is slightly better than when it was printed.
That is true. I don't think that's a reason to ever play it.
No, we're not going to play this card.
No, I don't think we're ever going to play
No.
this card. We certainly would you take it in a limited game?
Oh, no. This card's terrible. 4 mana, destroy.
But it blows up anything. Non-creature. Doesn't even kill the thing you really need to kill in
In
limited.
Onslaught Limited, it was all creatures. That's
Yeah,
like all it was.
that's true.
Imagine having that
Sure,
when it was
blow
like
up all my lands. I've got 80 guys
Yeah.
on the board now.
the most powerful card in Legion's Chain of Acid.
Yeah, well, so that's our card of the week. Not much more to say about that one.
I think we have a new card of the week to do this week.
We do. We're gonna, Mike,
I'm so excited.
we're
We have
introducing a new segment. This is our German card of the week.
German names are ridiculous.
I have a great fondness for German cards.
And now we have this beautiful Grabkreacher.
Grabkreacher. It's a Kreacher zombie,
Kreacher zombie.
and der Grabkreacher kann nicht blocken.
Schnell!
You know that means quickly, right?
We're leaving this in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Der Grabkreacher kann nicht blocken. Translation, he cannot block.
Yep.
He's never doing it.
I wonder if we should see if we can get people to guess what card it is, because we haven't actually named it in English yet.
That is true.
Oh, they will know it's a zombie. They can't
Oh,
block.
I did say zombie. The translation, zombie in German
Is zombie.
is zombie.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Du kannst den Grabkreacher aus denim Pants Friedhof worken, solange du Eminem Zombie Controllerist.
Wow, that was probably the worst German I have ever heard in my life.
Schnell!
I'm going to attempt the flavor text here. No, I'm not.
Okay.
I was thinking that for a second. I'm not even going to attempt that.
Liliana Vest said it. She said it well.
She did say it well. So I think we're going to be doing German card of the week as well.
We can let people guess what this one is. Schnellzauber. They can tell us what card Schnellzauber is.
Schnellzauber. We are going to move on to our wild speculation segment.
I gotta pee!
We're going to speculate. Restoration Angel. How does it feel to be right
It
all
went
the
up!
time?
Yay! Now I look smart. Yeah, Restoration Angel went from a lowly $3 to $4 up to what was last night $9 to $10.
Yep.
Go Restoration Angel.
As much as people have been talking about the different pieces of Pod and Twin, Restoration Angel was definitely an all-star.
It was.
the
More
Richmond.
Restos in the top 8 than Tarmogoyfs.
Yep. Birthing Pod. Going up or
Ooh.
going down? What do you think?
It's already spiked quite a bit already, and it's in the same price range as Splinter Twin, and I lump both of those cards into the same category. I would not be surprised if this card hit $30, but I'm not sure it will. I think 20, 22
Where do you think it's
is a
where's it
safe
at right
price.
now?
It's 18 about as of last night. It didn't really move much during the GP, which is kind of surprising. Usually cards spike. Like past examples, Olivia Voldaren
Yeah.
and Snapcaster spiked immediately because of the Pro Tour. But it hasn't moved much. I think that's
Pyromancer's Ascension.
yeah. Thank you, Pyromancer's Ascension. But Pod hasn't moved much.
Do you think part of that's due to people being afraid that it's going to get banned and they're timid about investing in it?
That could be it. 5 copies of a deck is a lot.
Yeah.
That's. I don't think it's actually as dominant as it would appear from this GP, but the fear is there. And it's not so much Pod being incredibly broken, it's the fact that Wizards is willing to ban cards in Modern to shake up the format.
Yes.
And I think if they want to shake up the format, they will ban Birthing Pod. It does a lot. It's cheap. It comes down below Counter Magic and kind of bumps control decks out of the format. Like, Pod lost to Blue Eye Red in the finals of the GP, but games usually don't go that way. That was a lot went into that game for Blue Eye Red to win.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Right now I'm gonna say it'll fall anywhere from $20 to $30, which is a pretty big range. But I don't think we'll see it banned next banning. It may happen the one after that.
Are there any cards you have your eye on right now? I think are going to spike, aside from the ones we've talked about recently.
I don't think Tarmogoyf's ever going to go down. It just keeps going up every week.
It does. That's insane.
Yeah.
It's broken like $200.
Yeah, it's about $200.
Over the course of like a
$190
year, it was like $75 this time last year.
Yes, it's scary. It's
That's ridiculous.
yeah.
And it's, at least in my opinion, priced way beyond what it's worth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a super efficient, super good creature, but in the end, it's just a body with no evasion and no protection.
It's so good and so iconic that I think since Underground Sea is trending towards 250, I would not be surprised if Tarmogoyf followed it. It could very easily be 220, 250. Now, this may take a while, and I do believe that at some point they'll release more copies because they have to, because this is not good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
such
do
an
not
iconic
want the
creature
card being
in
that
Legacy
much.
and Modern. And the other thing I want to talk about, wild speculation, is the sneak peek at the Modern event deck that came out yesterday. I think someone snapped a picture of the back of it. It got spoiled on MTG Salvation. Now, granted, this is not an official spoiler, but Salvation is usually really good about verifying the spoilers that they find out
They've
about.
been very good in the past, yeah.
So it seems likely this is probably true. Again, we're not saying 100% is sure it is, but there's a pretty good chance that it is. Hi everybody, Dan here, interrupting the podcast with a quick update about this. Aaron Forsyth did post on his Twitter feed. Here's the quote. Heads up, the picture of the Modern event deck floating around is a pre-production mock-up and is not completely accurate with what's final. So take that as you will. It may or may not be the black-white tokens. I think as a pre-production mock-up it probably still is, but whether or not some of the cards that are mentioned on the package are included in it or not, we don't know yet. I was doing editing when this came up on the Twitter, so I thought I would throw it in. Thanks for listening, guys, and now we'll go back to the show. And it looks like it's going to be the black-white tokens deck.
Yep.
The cards we know of are Elspeth Knight Errant, Intangible Virtue, Hero Bladehold, and Honor of the Pure.
Yeah. That was pretty obvious that those would be in it.
What other things do you think they're going to be in there, and how many copies? Like Marsh Flats is a big question mark. The deck runs a 4 of Marsh Flats.
I think it'd be really weird if they just put one type of fetch land in a box set, especially because these are the least in demand fetch lands, I'd say. But I think there'll be one. I just have the feeling that this is their way.
Filter lands, probably.
Yeah, those are actually very inflated
What's
right
the
now.
Blackroy one again? I don't remember the name.
Fetid Heath.
Fetid Heath.
But they're too much.
These are the lands that let you tap it and 1 colorless mana to get any combination of two colors of Man Atom. So you would get either a black, white, or white out of it.
Yeah, they were $17 for a little bit. I don't know what they're at right now, but those are the types of lands that should
over 20.
not be that expensive.
No.
This is a good way to bring the price down on those. I wouldn't be disappointed if they had one of each, a fetch land and one of those.
Yeah.
I think there's enough shock lands out now that I don't think they have to put it in this set. They may, but I doubt it because they're still in standard and there's so many of them out there.
So are you thinking that this is going to be the deck, but not the highest power level of the deck? You see what I'm saying?
No,
it's not going to be the tier 1 competitive version of the deck.
No, there's probably going to be like Tide Hollow Scullers, and generally with decks like these, they don't put the full amount of the card you want. Like they might put like 3 Lingering Souls, but they probably should put 4. Spectral Procession, that's an easy one.
Probably
Raise the Alarm, that card's hard to find.
Yeah.
Nobody knows why. There's just like no Raise the Alarms.
Nobody cared about them.
But if you look at the 4 known cards, one of them is Honor of the Pure, which makes me pretty positive Bitter Blossom will not be in this.
Seems likely.
Yeah, I don't think they'd have a non-bow like that.
I'm also assuming that production of this deck started before Bitter Blossom was unbanned.
True, that is possible.
Because Bitter Blossom's only been unbanned for a couple of weeks. They would have had to have been working on this for
I think they also would have
6 months
used
to
the like PR of showcasing this deck if it had Bitter Blossom in it for Bitter Blossom being unbanned. So the timing's a little off. Yeah, I would not expect Bitter Blossom. Also, I don't know how many people in the world agree with me on this, but Bitter Blossom isn't even good in tokens.
I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, it's just not.
Yeah,
that
it doesn't. You're right. It's not doing what tokens wants to do.
Yeah.
It fits more in a mid-range control.
Ooh, Windbrisk Heights.
Windbrisk Heights could definitely be
that's
in
one
here.
that could definitely be in there.
So we got Elspeth, Intangible Virtue, Hero Blade Hold, Honor of the Pure, Lingering Souls, Spectral Procession,
Raise the Alarm,
Windbrisk Heights.
Yep. Tide Hollow
Sculler, Zealous Persecution.
Oh, card I would absolutely put in this, Inquisition of Kozilek.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a nice way to get more of those. Those are artificially high, too.
Yeah, they're generally $8, but sometimes they creep up to like 10 or 12, which...
it's ridiculous for an uncommon.
Wizards is showing they'll print high power level uncommons again to bring the price down. Remand, hopefully Inquisition now, stuff like that. Path to Exile, tons of them.
Zealous Persecution should be in here.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Zealous Persecution.
Path to Exile?
They have to put some removal in there. I'd
one or
put
two
Path.
paths
Yeah,
in.
I'd put Path in it.
So this will be interesting. I don't know when Wizards officially is planning on, not spoiling, was previewing the deck
entire
itself.
deck,
Yeah, should be soon. And I don't know how this spoiler is going to affect their timeline on that. It may or may not. I remember when the Mirrodin set got super advanced spoiled, Wizards basically pretended that it didn't happen.
Oh,
for a few
the
weeks.
New Phyrexia
New
with Karn?
yeah. Wizards basically just ignored that it happened for a few weeks and then went ahead with their normal spoilers.
Yeah, I guess they had this like huge spectacle to unveil Karn as like this amazing, awesome card, and it just came out like 2 months before.
Yeah.
Just like, here's Karn.
Karn was an amazing, awesome
We're
card.
sorry.
All right, now we're moving on to upcoming events. These events are for the weekend of March 14th through 16th. This is Season 2 of the Wizards Grand Prix Circuit. Starts with GP Montreal. This will be a Theros Born of the Gods limited tournament, so that'll be sealed and then into draft for the Day 2 top 8. Star City Games is going to be in Seattle, Washington. We're probably still recovering from Richmond at that point. I know Chapin's going to be hosting. Cedric is going to be playing.
Oh, cool.
They mentioned that on the feed. It'll be their regular standard Legacy mix. So standard on Saturday, Legacy on Sundays. And there is a TCG Player Max Point Zeros 5K in Chicago. And that's going to be a standard format.
That's far away.
So
I won't be there.
All of those are far away. Montreal, Seattle, and Chicago. Chicago's reachable. You could drive to Chicago. Seattle's a lot further.
Someone
From New
could,
England.
not me.
That's the show for the week.
We did it!
We did it. Thanks, everyone, for listening again. You can leave us feedback at magicchatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/magicchatpodcast. Again, let us know what segments you like, what you didn't, what things you'd like to hear about. We should be on the MTG Casts website soon. That's that site that hosts all the different MTG podcasts.
So
We should be
please
up on that shortly.
Go listen, make us internet famous.
We want to
Thank
be
you.
internet famous. Until next time, keep up the conversation. So, Mike, did you listen to episode 1, Mike?
I didn't listen to episode
You
1.
haven't actually listened to all the hard editing?
Why are there so many ostriches? I was promised only a few ostriches.
So, and there's one point when we're talking about the whole listener feedback thing.
Yep.
That I'm going to have you do a dope slap. So just like
Okay.
that. No, wait, like, loud.
I can't.
Wow. Am I going to have to do my own dope slap?
You're going to have to do your own dope slap.
Wow. That is the...
There we go.
There we go.
Nope.
Cup your hand a little bit. Wow.
Should I do it with my left hand? No, just hurts.
Just hurts.
This has been a Green Bullet audio production.